Goldsborough Bridge battlefield. We're about to do demonstrations for artillery and infantry, starting with the artillery. Two guns behind me on this end is a 10-pound Parrott rifle. It would have been a rifled gun with a range of about 5,000 yards. On this side is a mountain howitzer, which is a 12-pounder smooth bore that would have had a range of about 2/3 of a mile.
Andrew's ready, sir.
Receive. On my command, from left to right, 2-second interval. Fire!
What he's going to do, he's going to face them, he's going to front them with their better side to you, because I don't think you want those weapons pointing at you. And we can fire the battalion, the company different ways. We can fire by company. Everybody fires their weapons simultaneously. The good news is anything out in front is going to get shot down. The bad news is everybody's unloaded. If the enemy's on the other side of that rise, hiding behind the porta-johns, right? And they try to rush us, can we reload faster than they can get to us with bayonet?
Well, I've got one of the famous reenactors for the battalion, and I'd like to introduce to you Mr. Lee Gordon, who has been in this business for a long time. Lee, can you tell us a little bit, first off, give us a little background history of you and what you do for a living other than this, and then we'll talk about some of the military reenactments.
Well, not surprisingly, I am a high school history teacher. I teach 9th grade world history. I've been doing that for 28 years. I also have a landscaping business that supports my teaching habit. So it's just always a pleasure to be out here and to be part of this.
Where are you from, Lee?
I am from Hillsborough, North Carolina, up in Orange County, land of the high taxes.
There was a famous academy there, I believe, as well.
Hillsborough Military Academy. The commandant's headquarters are still there, and they still find bits and pieces of the residual of the troops. It's wish they'd had the whole thing left intact, but it was destroyed in by the CCC during the Great Depression for the bricks to be reused as other things.
Can you tell us your rank and position within this company, and how long you've been reenacting?
I've been a reenactor, or living historian as we prefer, since 1995, and right now I'm serving as a captain and assistant adjutant for the 4th Regiment, Army of Northern Virginia, 1st North Carolina Battalion. Also have the role of serving as first lieutenant and adjutant for our home company, which is the 1st North Carolina Volunteers, the 11th North Carolina Regiment.
How many years?
For everything, 25, 24. I teach history, not math.
Will we ever grow up?
I hope not. If you stop growing, they're going to put me into the ground.
I'm with you on that, brother.
Staying young, right, that's right.
Well, thank you so much for giving this short interview, and thank you for what you do for teaching history.
Well, we appreciate you being out here and allowing us to be part of this, and thanks very much.
Thank you, sir.
All right, thanks.
Now I have Randy Sauls, president of the Goldsborough Bridge Battlefield Association. He's been significant in the efforts here at the battlefield, in the leading and all the leadership roles that require making a battlefield. Randy, can you tell us a little bit about your position here and the organization that you represent?
Sure, I'd be happy to. We began Goldsborough Bridge Battlefield Association just about 10 years ago. The land is owned by the County of Wayne. It was donated to the county for preservation as a historic site. The county was good stewards of the land for a good number of years, but really didn't have the expertise or the background to be able to develop it as a historic site. So about 10 years ago, I approached the county government at that time. Then I had spent probably 25 years researching this, and I had a pretty good idea of what had occurred here and a good plan to be able to develop and preserve the battlefield. And they took me up on my offer, and we started a nonprofit corporation called the Goldsborough Bridge Battlefield Association. And we're a group of volunteers. We're not part of the county, but the county owns the property. We simply operate it as volunteers for them. We do all the work out here, most of it ourselves. We hire out a few things if they're dangerous, for instance, but most of the work we do ourselves. The county maintains the site as it is a county property. We simply put on programs, and we erect trail signs and clean up, and have been successful in putting up snake rail fences and the barn that's located on the site, the flagpole, preserving the earthworks, all those sorts of things.
Tell us a little bit about the event that we're experiencing today.
This is sort of an event that I guess you'd call it a knock the rust off event. The infantry and the artillery both today, they'll do a lot of reenacting during the year at various battlefields. It's early enough in the season right now that they haven't done a lot yet, and so they asked us whether we could host the group here. It's the 1st North Carolina Battalion, and that's an umbrella group of several reenacting units, infantry units, and there's some artillery as well, and they go around and attend reenactments around the country, most on the eastern seaboard, but some out in the western theater as well. And this is an opportunity to come out early in the season and drill and sort of refamiliarize themselves after a long winter on what it's like to drill, to load and fire a musket or an artillery piece.
That is great. How many states and how far-reaching is this event with participants?
Most of the folks here are from North Carolina, but we do have a handful from Pennsylvania, and we actually have a group that came down from Canada. The umbrella group of the 1st North Carolina Battalion is not necessarily just a North Carolina group. Most of the units in the overall group are North Carolina, but there are a few from other states as well. And I was thrilled when I got an envelope from, I think it was Ontario or somewhere, with a Bank of Montreal check or something like that in it. And they had a note on there saying that they hope that I received their registration before they arrived. But we're very happy to have them.
Well, again, we can't thank you enough, the citizens of Wayne County and the state of North Carolina, as well as the nation.
It is our pleasure.
For the history that you portray and teach. Thank you.
Thank you.
The accurate history.
Thank you very much. Enjoy it.
Thank you, Randy. Lynn Bull is beside of me here, a legend known to many in the reenacting world. I like to say that and embarrass him, but it is the truth. What I've asked Lynn to do is to identify or talk a little bit about camps, the camps that we're in here now, and talk about the tents and anything else that he may want to discuss.
Well, what we're looking at over here to your right, my left, are what they call shelter halves. And it was a tent that was designed by the French, that it comes with two halves and you would button them together. So one soldier would have one half, the other soldier would have the other half. One soldier would carry one pole and 3 stakes, and another soldier would carry the other pole and 3 stakes, and they would pack them on their knapsack, and that's the type of tent they used in the field. They called them dog tents because the soldier said in a downpour, a dog would have to be small to stay dry in one of those tents. So they were imported at the early part of the war. The larger tent to my left is what they call a common tent, and there would be, believe it or not, 6 people in one of those tents. And the shelter halves would be the type of tent the soldiers would carry on campaign, where the common tent would be a tent that would be used in a more permanent camp. And the big argument is that you notice that the 2 shelter halves have poles that are sectionalized, and history kind of tells us that the soldiers would go out in the woods and they would cut down a tree and get 2 forked sticks and a center pole to put the tent up. Well, you can imagine if you had an army of 30,000 men, half of them begin in the woods looking for tent poles. And so I think these are actually issued, even though they're still arguing about that 150 years later. We're in the Confederate camp. Behind me, the flag with the white star and the blue stripe and the white stripe was the flag that North Carolina adopted at the beginning of the war between the states. They did not have a state flag prior to the conflict, and they came up with this design. You'll notice it's very similar to the modern North Carolina flag. However, the colors are rearranged. Now the modern flag has a red stripe on the top, a white stripe on the bottom, and the field is blue. The star just represents that it represents the state. Now the federal government, interestingly enough, after the war, made North Carolina change their flag, because the two dates that were on the earlier North Carolina flag, one of them was the Halifax Accords and the other one was the date they seceded from the Union. So the federal government didn't really want that on the new flag, and so now the new North Carolina flag, they've added the initials NC, they've reversed the colors, and they've also got the date of the Halifax Accords, and I think the Edenton, I never can remember the resolves.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's interesting that other states, they didn't do that. Virginia, of course, they had a flag that was carried during the war, and that's the same flag they carry today. Texas, the same way. Florida was a red St. Andrew's cross. I don't know why North Carolina was kind of singled out to change the flag. Over behind me is a battle flag. Now, at the beginning of the war, the Confederate flag was 3 stripes. It had a red stripe, a white stripe, and another red stripe with a blue field with 13 stars in a circle, which looked very much like the national colors. And the Battle of First Manassas, if the flag was not flying in the breeze, it was mistaken for a national flag. And you had Confederates advancing on Union positions, and the Confederates were wearing blue uniforms that they thought they were reinforcements, and there were several batteries that were captured because of the confusion. And so the Army in the fall of 1861 developed the battle square, which is a St. Andrew's cross, which has had a red field, has a blue St. Andrew's cross with 13 stars on it, and that was a battle flag. That was an Army flag. It was never adopted by the government of the Confederacy. And of course, this is the flag now that's in contention, which is as American as the Betsy Ross flag. I won't get into politics, but that's just a side note.
And the colors themselves allowed it to stand out
Yes.
in the dim of fire, in the smoke.
Yeah. Because you got to remember, these muskets were all black powder, and if you had a regiment of 800 or 900 men, one volley would make it to the point that you couldn't see anything. Now, of course, on a day like today, it's windy. The smoke would quickly dissipate. But if you had a still day, you just couldn't see, and so it helped eliminate the confusion of attacking your own sides.
And the importance of the battle flag on the field are?
Well, they would use it as a rallying point. The thing you got to remember is they fought in linear tactics, meaning they were lines. And the reason they did that is that you can control your company or your battalion or your regiment. The last thing you want to do, you would line up, you would be firing at the enemy, and you would fire and you would slowly advance, and when the enemy looked like they were going to falter, you would fix bayonets and charge. And once you said charge, you basically lose control of the line, because they're just going to go pell-mell against the enemy. So the flag would be a rallying point. It was also a symbol of honor. You would take your bravest soldier in the regiment, and he would be the color bearer. Of course, their life expectancy wasn't very long, and you had, like the 26th North Carolina, the Battle of Gettysburg, I think they lost 5 color bearers, and then the colonel picked it up, advanced 5 or 6 feet, and then he was shot, wounded mortally. And we kind of look at, if you surrender your flag, it's dishonor, but flags that made it across the field at Gettysburg and were captured by the Union soldiers where they broke the federal line, that's showing how far they had advanced. And so it's kind of a twofold thing.
And you've got a color guard, basically. Yes. That is how many men?
You would have if you had regimental colors, you would have a corporal on either side of the colors, and then you'd have 4 corporals in the rear, and they were all armed, but they would not fire when the battalion or the regiment was firing, but they were there to protect the flag. And there are many instances where the color bearer would see that the colors were about to be captured, and he would actually take the flag off the staff and wrap it around his body. One of the most interesting flags I've ever seen, the 10th Connecticut, was at the Battle of Plymouth, and they captured the regiment almost intact. And when they were getting ready to do the formal surrender, they took the state colors and they tore them into individual pieces, and they gave each soldier a piece of the flag to hide. A lot of them they all went to Andersonville. Very many of them didn't come back. But in the 1880s, there was a move in Connecticut for the flags to be returned to the state capitol. These flags are actually carried on the field. And they made a replica of the 10th Connecticut's state colors, and the soldiers came to a reunion, and they would take their piece of the flag that they had and they sewed it where it would have been on the original flag. Of course, half the flag was missing, and you can see that in the State House in Hartford even today.
That is awesome.
Which is really kind of cool.
Question I have again about the camps. I remember a few years back at the reenactment at Bentonville, driving up with the number, and they were minimal compared to the numbers that were actually there. But the amount of smoke from the campfires was almost, would take your breath. I mean, it was just, because I guess the atmosphere was holding it down. But even in that time, the amount of firewood that was used equated to a lot of defoliation, I guess, of forest and stuff in those areas because of the camps and the number of men that were trying to keep warm by fire and cook their food.
Fence rails disappeared. It's interesting that at Fredericksburg, Virginia, the Confederates occupied Fredericksburg in the early days of December of 1862. You have the battle towards the middle of the month, and then the Federals basically are on the opposite shore at Falmouth, and they're there for the rest of the war. And they defoliated that area to the point that for the next 25 years after the war was over, the residents of Fredericksburg in that area would have to travel 25 miles to get firewood.
Wow.
And there were areas that would just strip clean, especially if you were in winter quarters where they were going to be there for any length of time. And you see pictures of homes around Atlanta that they would basically strip the wood off the homes to use in the camps.
Yeah, and even in the logs and trees that they had to cut, there weren't any chainsaws.
No, it was all done by saw or axes.
Can you imagine? Wow. Lynn, I'd like to thank you for what you do as far as teaching the history locally. I know you get mad at me saying it, but I've been so impressed by the fact that you are renowned by all reenactors, not only in the eastern seaboard for the things you do. You've done things for the Smithsonian. You've done things for people, some of the history organizations in Europe. It would take too long. It would be a show itself to get all the stories. But again, can't thank you enough, and appreciate you talking with us.
You're welcome. Nice. Thank you.
Oh man, we've got a classic here. Kurt Cole from Eastern North Carolina. Actually, you're from
I live in
Jacksonville?
No, I live in Pottersville, North Carolina, Duplin County.
Duplin County.
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, like we were talking about Lynn Bull, this is another gentleman who has reenacted most of his life. How many years?
20 plus.
Now, I thought you were about 60-something.
I am.
No.
I am personally, but I haven't been reenacting that long.
These guys reenact, and they are in character during most of the time, but it's a lot of fun when they are not in character because they are characters, and we have a lot of fun. I enjoy being able to go out and talk to them from all over Eastern North Carolina, who they come together, they portray history, but they also enjoy each other's company and the love of history and portraying it. And what do you do? And tell us a little bit about you.
Okay, like I said, I've been doing this about 20 plus years. I started back then because I had a love of history, kind of a history nerd, you would probably say.
I am too.
And I had ancestors, and that piqued my interest, especially in the Civil War, when I found that out. And then, so one day I went to a reenactment in Washington. I said, yeah, I'd really like to try that because it's one thing to sit in the chair and look at it in the book and look at those old black and white pictures which are fabulous, but it's another thing when you come out and you see it. It says, I like to call it history in 3D because all your senses are involved. You see it, you hear it, you smell it, you can touch it. The smell of gun smoke and wool and smoke and fires, it brings everything into play, and it just makes it a more realistic experience.
And there are even sometimes blood in accidents and things that occur, even though you try very hard not to have that happen. But think about it. You're using the same primitive saws, axes, things like that. You don't have a chainsaw into the camp. Plus, you're out there firing black powder weapons that can be dangerous into itself.
That's the thing people don't understand. We're only firing blanks, so to speak, but these weapons are real. They're reproductions, but they're real, and they're dangerous. You got to be sharp and on top of it all the time, and we go through great pains and have great safety measures to make sure that everybody stays safe, but still, accidents happen.
And that's one of the reasons for the event today, is not only to portray history for others, but to be able to gather and train and to make sure that you are in sync and safe.
That's exactly what we're here for. It's a training process. See, our thing is we normally for events get together about once a month. And these guys were together for 4 years. They did it every day, so they knew it inside and out, just like the back of their hand. They could do it in their sleep. And it takes us a little bit longer to get in that groove. So that's why we train. Every event we go to, before we do whatever it is we're going to do, we have some training time to try to stay sharp. And you always have new people coming in, so you're constantly teaching, and you're constantly learning yourself, and you're constantly practicing. Like anything else, if you want to be good at it, you have to practice.
Right. What unit do you portray?
My personal unit, we portray the 18th North Carolina. We do 2 impressions. We also portray the 9th New Jersey, because the 9th New Jersey spent a great deal of time in North Carolina. They were actually here at Goldsborough, as a matter of fact.
They served as the provost guard in Goldsborough too. I think they did in New Bern, but I know they did in Goldsborough. The 9th New Jersey was the provost guard, and they were the first unit to enter out of New Bern to take Goldsborough from, and it was surrendered. The town was surrendered by the Mayor Poole. You didn't know that?
I was not exactly sure.
Just say that, and then we'll be good.
Say I didn't know that?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Man, I love you. Appreciate all you do.
Thank you.
The whole crowd that you're with, they're great people, and they go all over the country. Eastern North Carolina and
all of them down the eastern coast.
You go Gettysburg.
Yep.
What's further south?
There's actually an event in Florida called Lusty, and we're thinking about going there next year. We tend to go north more, but we're trying to change that and go do a little more southern things. But the furthest I've ever been south is Charleston.
Well, thank you so much. Appreciate all you do.
Okay, thank you.
Now we have a unique reenactor here to the area, Miss Leslie Poplinski. I did well there, didn't I? You did good. And what is so unique, as Leslie is portraying a man soldier, and she's also from Canada. She has drove all the way down to participate in this event. I'm assuming just this event?
Yeah, I make it down here 3 or 4 times a year.
Okay.
As often as I can. I've been with these guys for a really long time. This is my 29th season as a reenactor.
29th. Well, she's out doing most of the men here. I'm going to be listening to this young lady and looking for her more often. So tell us first off a little bit about your life in Canada.
Well, I'm married and had 3 kids. 2 of them are teenagers. They also reenact. We have a number of reenactors in Canada as well. I was born in Central Ontario. My history teacher in high school is the one that got me involved in this. He was a corporal of the company that I currently belong to, which is the 10th Louisiana, Company C. And we traveled a lot together over the years. We've gone from a fair number to not so many anymore, and we only get 4 or 5 of us able to come down. At home I teach high school, history, English, law, whatever they want me to teach, not math. Don't like math. I like it, I'm not good at it. I travel a lot, as much as I possibly can, but this is really my other home. I'm down here as frequently as I can because these guys have always been just fantastic to me.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Now we're going to get into what you're actually portraying and the reenactment part or living history part that you're doing here. Tell us a little bit about it.
I represent, it's twofold. I represent as many as 500 women who served in uniform in the 1860s undetected. There were many women who were detected and promptly kicked out. There are other women who were not detected right away but discovered under various conditions. There was, for example, a sergeant who was discovered in a POW camp having a baby. She had been in uniform up until that point. Somebody found out. There were many women who went because their husbands went, their brother went, their fiance or their boyfriend went, or they just plain felt that they needed to join up and support the cause with more than just being at home worrying and putting gear home that way.
So is this the first time that you've been here at this event? I know you said you've been here several times, but actually on this battleground.
This is the first time I've been to this battleground. When I have the opportunity to try something new, I love doing it. I love to learn. I learn something new every time I come. And because this is battalion drill, I am also a color sergeant for the battalion, which is also very unique in that I'm a woman and I'm Canadian. And so getting to come down and learn new things from a lot of the other guys and be able to teach my trade as a color sergeant is really, really important to me. That's a piece about the Canadians, by the way. The Canadian end is really important because more than 50,000 of us fought. We have about 250 reenactors who do Civil War in Canada, and we do represent the thousands of men who went over the border and fought for both sides, about probably 8,000 or 10,000 on the Confederate side, and the northern side, the rest. Now, the really interesting thing is that we represent the Louisiana unit, and we selected Louisiana because of the Cajuns. And the Cajuns, I don't know if you know or not, were booted out of Canada.
Yes.
And they settled in Louisiana.
Right. And
that's where the French Quarter comes from in New Orleans. So the 10th Louisiana was formed in New Orleans, and our unit, our current reenacting unit, was selected simply because we had a large number of Irish, we had a large number of English, we had a large number of German, all kinds of different backgrounds, and what better place to get that great amount of diversity than on the docks, and that's where they came from.
You're so right. And what's so unique about this is how many history teachers that you do find reenacting. And again, like some of the others said earlier, the ability to be able to surround yourself with the senses of what it would have been like. It helps you to teach others of the hardships.
Yeah, absolutely. I use reenacting in my classroom almost every single day.
As the smoke is going through right here.
Smoke's going through here. I use it almost every single day in my classroom. The kids, my computer comes up, and when my screensaver comes up, it flips through pictures, and I have all kinds of reenactor pictures on there because it's high interest. And sometimes when the kid's not interested in learning about how to write a paragraph, they look up and they see these really cool pictures and they start asking questions, and sometimes it piques them to where they need to go. I bring my kid in when I do World War I with my grade 10s because, well, World War I, the gear is a little different, but it's hands-on. And that's the best way for kids to learn. Hands-on, go out, try it. I tell them I sleep in the dirt. I tell them I play with guns. I tell them I travel and do all kinds of really cool things. And we talk about the evolution of guns and all kinds of things that fit really beautifully into my curriculum.
Well, I'd just like to, again, thank you for what you do. And you're always welcome here in our county, Wayne County, North Carolina.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Thank you.